But I read the statement that was issued by the 207, the secretary, of course, Kenneth Deere, and to me, the issues that are being raised about the political agreement that's been reached, which is somewhere within the confines of the National Assembly in Quebec, are things that people ought to be concerned about. And certainly some of the iron workers, some of the people working are concerned about that. Some people in the community, in terms of, the council can make a statement about the increase and enhancement of Kahnawake jurisdiction, but people will say at what cost? They'll say at what cost? What did you give up to get this perception of increased jurisdiction? And this came up in the report, I think, also that was issued last week. The report that you did when you interviewed Rhonda Kirby, and there, of course, what she's saying, well, they don't understand. Well,
they don't understand that why they're unhappy.
Well, they don't
understand.
Well, I got the impression that what she was saying was is that they don't understand the agreement. There's a question of understanding. And
I think what she was saying was, the Mohawk Council couldn't understand why they were still unhappy at this point, because they felt that they had done everything that they could to resolve the issue, and that they were still working on the union dues issue. Well, but at the end of the day, it didn't really come down to that. It didn't come down to the MSI or the CST. Those are big parts of the issue, but what really came down to it was associating oneself within a union, having to pick. There was no opting out, there was nothing, and all of that going back to Quebec. Being forced, not having an option to do one or the other. So bring it to this day. I know this week that members of the Mohawk Bridge Consortium, some of the ironworkers, and the Mohawk Council had met in the afternoon to come to some sort of an agreement in terms of dealing with the union, dealing with the jurisdiction, and Quebec being involved, and of course Pomerleau declaring the job a union job. There have been some new developments. The Mohawk Council did release a statement saying that there are developments and that a joint statement would be issued at some point between MBC and the Mohawk Council.
With this last piece of negotiation, I believe that we've finally addressed the last outstanding piece of work that needed to be discussed between Quebec and Kahnawake, and that was the union dues issue. With this being settled, I believe that we're very close to a business arrangement and contract being negotiated and signed between Mohawk Bridge Consortium and Pomerleau, contractor who has won the bid for Part B.
I think it's useful to point out, though, that in the statement, which I don't think has been widely distributed in the community, one of the points that Kenneth Deere makes is that they have waited for progress from the Mohawk Council statement, a meeting, okay, and at that point felt it was incumbent upon them to make this statement now to the community.
Yes.
Also, that was also stated in that release was that the council as a whole was, if not refused, reluctant to, and I'll put it that way because I don't want to misquote what was in that statement, but that Mike DeLille said he would meet, but has not yet.
Yeah, he hadn't yet. Yeah. Well, what happened was the 207 had called a meeting last week. I think it was on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and they were meeting about this issue. Now, they had invited Mohawk Council to attend, and I spoke to the Grand Chief outside of Cafe Delight, and I had asked him what had gone on, and he told me that he had a previous meeting with something to do with his daughter that he had already committed to, and the meeting was called last minute. But nobody else from the Mohawk Council went, and I think that Mike DeLille had said that he would meet with them, but not on that occasion. But then he came back and said, and there was no resolve to it to deal with.
The people affected by it are also have their concerns.
Right.
And one of those concerns is the issue of not being consulted. It's about something that deeply affects them.
Yes.
And some of the questions that have come up, or the comments that have come up, have to do with, look, you know, what goes through a community decision-making process and what doesn't? You know, how is it that Mike Bush...
Why did this not go through the community
why
decision-making process?
Why was a mandate given to Rhonda Kirby and Mike Bush to negotiate this with the federal government and sign on behalf of the community?
But I mean, you can look at that. That's not our law, though. Isn't the whole point of a community decision-making process to put our laws through this process, apparently? But from my understanding is that this law wasn't our law, it's Quebec's law, and we're trying to negotiate with them to change their law, to accept MSI over CSST, to accept certain cards, to accept, so it's their law, and so we have to get them to change their law. So why would a Quebec law go through a community decision-making process? Is that what you mean?
Like, what people are saying, though.
Meaning the agreement that they did come to.
But the parties are not involved with the political processes here in terms of saying, well, what is our position going to be when we go to the Quebec government? You know.
So not everybody agrees then that the Mohawk Council has the right or the power to make agreements on behalf of the community, because this is a big sticking point. Because, you know, Rhonda said in her interview, well, we are the leaders of the day.
Yeah, but
we are the government of the day. People have mandated us to.
But people are saying other
But then
things
don't represent yourself.
Yeah.
You know, don't represent yourself as representing the community when you haven't got that support.
Yeah, and
especially with and I think that's why other people started coming forward and saying, no, they don't represent me.
Yeah.
You know, and then these things started coming up.
And it comes down to some perceptual things. The basic numbers is that majority of people do not elect people to the council. Majority of people in the community do not take part in the electoral process. Okay, a majority of people, therefore, you can say they don't support them, but you could also say, well, by omission, they do support it.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Well, and that's the one thing that the Mohawk Council has been saying over the years is that the silent majority. But we're going to talk more about that when we get back. We've got to take a quick commercial break. Don't go away. You're watching Straight Talk here on Local Channel 4, and we'll be right back.